Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Stately Office Hours. If you've joined us before, you'll know that what we do every Friday at this time is we have a few members of the team here to talk about what we're working on at Stately and on XState and get your feedback, answer your questions, and discuss some cool things that we want to discuss. If you have any questions, you can always ask in the YouTube live comments. You can tweet us using hashtag Stately Office Hours, or you can ask a question in our Discord. We have a channel called Office Hours there. If you want to join our Discord, you go to discord.gg/xstate. And that's where we have all of our community discussions. We're all hanging out there all the time. So if you have any questions for us, you'll be able to find us very easily in there. And we have an Office Hours channel there. So if you want to ask questions, and I'm going to try to keep an eye on it. I've got a lot of windows open today, but I'm going to try my best. So just ask us whatever you want. Why don't we start off with, there's only 3 of us today. We have some poorly members of the team, so sending our love to them. And well, let's just do a quick introduction. I'm Laura, and I do the developer and designer relations at Stately. David in the noisy coffee shop.
Yeah, so I'm holed up in a coffee shop right now. I'm David. I am the founder of Stately AI and creator of XState, but not the creator of state machines or state charts. Those have been around longer than I've been alive. So yeah, it's me.
Hey there, I'm Farzad, and I'm a lead engineer in Stately.
And yeah, I think I worked out last week that the state charts paper is still just a little bit younger than me. So this week we have an agenda, which I have managed to lose. Let's start off with talking about the question of the week. So what I'm trying to do every week is have a question that we can get some feedback from the rest of you on how you use XState or what you want from XState. And this week, after last week's office hours, where we sort of started discussing how do you convince your team to use XState, we got some really great feedback. So I've kind of grouped these into sort of rough themes because we did get a lot of responses. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate that. And how about I'm going to tell you, I'll read you each of the headlines, as it were, and a comment or two. And then David and Farzad, you can tell me what you think about these approaches.
Sounds good.
So the first one is, it's not an obvious one. It's a good one. It's making use of the visualizer. So presenting to your team using the visualizer. So Saya Obe said, I did a demo of the visualizer in front of devs and non-devs, UX designers and managers. They like the fact it gives the opportunity to discuss about features before jumping into coding. And Yanir Manna said, I did a presentation showing the amazing power of XState. Visualizer, examples, inspect for debugging, and generate testing. So I think that's probably how the 2 of you would show it off, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it is really interesting because I think that just the idea of having a visual representation of your logic, that's what really sells it. And at least that's what sold it to me. I'm primarily a visual learner, so just being able to see, okay, I could distill my app logic into boxes and arrows and just follow the arrows whenever something happens, like, that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, and we've heard it from a lot of people too, that, that is really a good selling point. And I feel like if there wasn't a visual representation, state machines would definitely be a harder sell.
Yeah. How about you, Farzad? What do you think about presenting that way?
I feel like when I was getting into this area, the visualization was actually the primary factor that I got sold on state machines and state charts. Yeah, but I think if I wanted to convince my teammates, I would take a different approach if the other person is a designer or an engineer or just some other stakeholder. Because I feel like you have to convince them differently, because something that's important for a designer might not necessarily be important for an engineer. Engineers are usually harder to sell these type of ideas to.
Oh, I don't know. Designers can be pretty stubborn as well. Funnily enough, the next one that I've got is inspired partly by your response, Farzad, on Twitter. It's giving the team examples using their own work. So what you said, Fazad, was take a part of the app they modeled, find out the bugs, and solve them by remodeling it using a state chart, then show them the visualization. And that's, I guess, following what you were saying about something that's custom to the people that you're trying to convince to use XState.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually what I did to a few of my engineer colleagues in one of the companies that I used to work for. Yeah, so I actually did that. Yeah, based on true stories.
It's definitely a power play.
Was it successful?
It was, yeah.
That's good. And Amy Pellegrini suggested the idea of giving them side-by-side examples. So Amy says, make a short experiment and compare with other tools. For example, implement a feature in XState and Redux and see for yourself, which I think is it's a lot of work, but it's a very thorough approach.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of work. And I've done it with a few companies that I've mentored and been mentoring, where, we would basically untangle really complex, like use effect and use state logic in React specifically, and sort of just unify that into one machine. And what makes it clear is okay, now we have everything that could possibly happen as an event, and you also know exactly when effects can happen, which I think is definitely a big forgotten thing. So yeah, there's definitely value in showing the before and after code of without state machines and with state machines, whether you're using XState or not.
Yeah. More from Amy, who's really full of great ideas, is showing the existing project. So this is kind of similar to Fazad remodeling part of what someone's been working on. So showing existing projects using XState. So looking for examples of features and applications currently using XState as well to see them in action. And
yeah, one thing that can really, really help is state charts shine when you're trying to grow the application feature. They don't necessarily shine at the beginning of the modeling, because it's usually the learning curve is very steep at the beginning, but then it gets very linear at the end. So you just have to show the growth of the application and the complexity with the state charts. That's where you can sell the idea.
Yeah. Do you think that that's difficult to do because you are having to, you're going to have to do quite a lot of work to be able to show the complexity? You're almost building it yourself at that point.
I don't think it's hard, because that's something that eventually happens to all the applications out there. You eventually need to fix some bugs that you have already, or you have to add features. And the more you're under pressure of the deadlines and releases, the better.
Yeah, something I often hear is that at the beginning, people will say, this is simple. I don't need a state machine. I don't need a state chart. I'm just going to do it the normal way I do. And then inevitably, a month or two down the road, they're like, this has gotten to the point where I really wish I used a state machine at the start. And so for people who don't do that, you're lucky. Your application is really simple. You don't have that many features. Okay, great. You don't you don't need any sort of complex state orchestration or management. But that's not the case for a lot of apps.
Yeah, and kudos to you that you didn't go with the state charts. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, I don't think many apps are that simple.
Yeah, many people think their apps are simple until it's not. So you don't foresee the complexity that's coming. Yeah.
Yeah. A great suggestion, another one by Amy, is to read, learn, and study the theory behind state machines and pass that knowledge on. It will be so much easier to make your case to them. And I think that this is a strategy that I use when it comes to things like accessibility or trying to teach people about privacy and tracking and things like that, like areas that I've always specialized in. It's becoming the expert so that you can answer your team's questions and you can help them progress. It's much easier to get them on board if you can just give them the resources yourself or point them to the right resources, rather than them telling them to go away and look out for themselves and find out for themselves.
Yeah, I think that digesting information for other people it's really altruistic and really helpful too. For example, accessibility, you don't want to say go read the entire ARIA spec and then come back to me. It's more like, I know the ARIA, or I don't, but Laura does. I know the ARIA spec, and I'm just going to give people helpful pointers and, put them in the right direction. And you could do the same thing with state machines and state charts. So you don't have to be like, learn everything there is to know. You could just be like, hey, here's a few guidelines to make your code a little bit better.
Yeah, like Josh Farrell suggested, instead of having the product write tons of tickets to define how things should work, pair program with the product to model the machine using the visualizer, and then like getting the devs to implement it as well. So working together, pairing on it. We had a couple of funny ones. Just dictate that you're using it because you're the team lead. So Cedric on Discord said, we will use XState. And Ivan Tanev, as everyone knows from our Discord, said, I was the team lead and what I said went. Seems to work. Highly recommended. I think everyone has that option.
Yeah, again, that's a power play, a play by force.
Yeah.
So not recommended for everyone. But
No. And Cedric also said, tell them how fast and responsive the Stately team is. Like, said the XState team improves the project really quickly. Office hours give a good idea of the roadmap and features. When something is proposed, there are real discussions and project improvement from only an idea on Discord. And I would second that, because I'm largely not the person involved in that you lot are very, very responsive and really keen to make XState as useful as it can be to the other developers.
Yeah, Laura is most useful for long-term information dispelling. So we're the short-term, like, hey, let me answer your question real quick. And Laura's like, let's answer all of your questions once and for all in one, resource.
Yeah, and we're getting there. And I have something to show you later around that too. And Cedric also mentioned promoting the collaboration benefits, which I think when we're talking about the visualizer, like how we were saying, that the visual element is an appeal to a lot of us. That's also the key feature when it comes to collaboration for a lot of people too. And we also have the suggestion of just timing it right with a good use case for the team. So waiting until the right use case comes up and then getting in there. And Jan on our Discord went into some detail about waiting until there was a good point to implement XState and showing how to do it. And finally, oh, sorry, you go for it.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that's something that I heard a lot too, where people will say, like, I like the idea of state machines, XState and whatever, but I don't have a good use case for it. And in general, the use cases, if you're sending events, if your app is doing anything, like even a very simple state machine can help you represent that in a logical, clear way. But yeah, we're going to be adding a lot more examples so that people can recognize, like, oh, I have a very similar use case. I should, copy what they're doing.
Yeah, examples will really help with that, and also help with the modeling aspect where people are just not entirely sure how to model the use case that they have. And finally, we had a suggestion that made me laugh, which is basically making people less intimidated by terminology. James Womack said, call whatever they're currently using WState. Because sometimes people have a resistance to named things. They might think it's too new and shiny or it's a buzzword. But I think at this point we can say that XState's been around for a while and you've all been working on it. It's definitely mature in that sense.
Yeah, it's been around for 6 years, and I've even posted an article called, you might not need a state machine library, because really it's the ideas that apply. And you're going to see this in a lot of our future tooling too, where it's, we're not just creating tools for people who use XState, we're creating tools for anyone who wants to, visually represent their application logic in any way. In their code base.
Yeah.
Laura, are those all the replies?
Those are most of them. Yeah, as I tried to summarize them because there were so many. But if people want to read them, if you go to Twitter, you can see the replies off our original tweet. There's a couple in the Discord, but most of it's on Twitter.
One tweet I saw a few days ago was unrelated to this thread, by the way, something just separate, was that somebody said that when I wanted to, I think this person works at Atlassian, if I remember right. He said that when he wanted to sell the idea of the state machines and XState to his team at Atlassian, he first introduced useEffectReducer that was developed by David. And they gradually started to see the benefits, and that was like the middle ground between the state machines area and the normal useEffect and useReducer area.
Yeah, I need to.
Interesting.
Yeah, I need to promote it more because you know, like I was saying earlier, the primary way you do side effects, at least in React, is you're reacting to just things that change. But most of the time, as developers, we know exactly when we want to execute effects, and we wish that we could just execute them. But obviously, you know, that's not declarative. You can't really do that. So useEffectReducer is sort of a way to do that and to do it in a safe way. And then that's a stepping stone towards like just using state machines to represent that.
John in the comments said, and I think this is in terms of showing part of your, like showing the visualizer and showing your own work. I did the same thing, but I made the mistake of transforming an enormous and complex flowchart into a state machine. The good part is I found gaps in the original logic. The downside is I showed them a massive state machine with all the TY types and melted some brains. Oh, sorry, TY machine.
TS.
TY types, sorry, TS types.
Yeah.
Muddled now. It's the best reception I've had is from UX designers. I can understand that. I think it's the visual element really helps, and people who are used to working in flowcharts, it makes state machines, state charts is not a massive distance from that.
Yeah, and I think you know, sometimes people get scared because it's like, oh, this state machine is so complicated. It's like the state machine is a distillation of what your code is. So if the state machine is complicated, your code is like 5 times as complicated. But that's also why state charts exist, is because we could group those states and collapse them and be like, okay, you know what, instead of 20 different states, here's 3 states, and each of these states have substates. And then that's something that, like, for example, a UX designer can easily take a look at and be like, okay, so in a general sense, we have a login state, we have a dashboard state, and all of these states have, you know, other things in them. Yeah.
Yeah. Showed the wrong one. Cedric said, this is a long-term investment to deal with XState. This is most simple to do it in a new project, but we gain so much time in maintenance and testing.
Yeah, and that's the idea too. Like, state machines aren't just to make things visual. It's also to, you know, improve maintenance, because, and we're seeing this in our own projects too, because we're definitely using XState all over the place. Features just become events and transitions. Like I presented something to the team, like with the editor, which has a lot of, you know, state machines, state charts, actor model type stuff. And at first, and Farzad could probably talk more to this, but we were worried about, like, how are we going to onboard the rest of the team to this code base? And I said, listen, everything is an event. You just send an event to an actor, and that's like the entirety of, you know, everything. And so that becomes pretty easy to test as well, because you're just sending events. Farzad, you could correct me if I'm wrong.
No, yeah, I'm going to miss the chance of correcting you, because you're right. Yeah, I mean, we were really worried about getting onboarded into the editor project, because, you know, that's inherently a very complicated project. But it turns out that using the actor model, it's just basically you're dealing with some separate entities called actors, and then you just have to send an event, and that's it. There is absolutely zero learning curve. Just send an event and react to received events. That's it.
Yep.
Going back to talking about showing your state charts to other people, Lucas says clustering is huge with this. You just need to show the highest states to designers. And that's an interesting idea, being selective about what you're sharing so that you don't scare people off straight away.
Right. And yeah, that is really only possible with state charts, because if you try to represent it as a state machine, you are going to have to show like tons of states. And so I think like Figma, FigJam, and like other design tools, and Laura, you could, you know, correct me if I'm wrong too, but like they do this, like you could show these flows, and designers typically do, of like, here's a higher level flow of this state goes to this state, goes to that state, but all the implementation details are hidden, which they should be. You, like, designers need to see different information than developers.
Yeah, and
you don't have to necessarily name them as states, because you can, like, every state can be represented as a part of a user story in the entire user flow. So instead of saying we have a state logged in or logged out, just say when the user is logged in or when the user is logged out. Just make it human readable.
Yeah, I think that can go a long way in helping. And also in the design process, you don't start off with that level of detail. You start off with a much higher level of like overview of what you're going to be working on and trying to think of all the possible eventualities and how the flow might work. And so you can do the same thing when you're building your state charts, is you start with what the big pictures and then how it drill down into those smaller details. Now, next week, we are going to give you maybe some typegen demos of what Matt and Matthias have been working on. But because we've got neither of them here today, we're not going to do that. And also, the last Friday of this month, I wanted to remind you that we're going to be doing demo special. So we're going to have more demos to show you, and we'll be inviting people to give demos themselves. We've got some good ones going on. And the other thing I wanted to tell you about today was, David, do you want to tell us a little bit about your upcoming Frontend Masters workshop, which I'm looking forward to attending?
Yeah, so in about a couple weeks, I forget the exact dates. I know it's on a Thursday or Friday. I should probably
It's
know
the
this.
21st, I believe. It's the 21st of October at 9:30 to 5:30 Central Daylight Time.
Awesome. You know more than me. But yeah, I am giving a Frontend Masters workshop on XState. And so if you have taken my workshops already, there's 2 workshops currently. There's the base XState workshop, which is just using vanilla JavaScript. And there's also the XState React workshop, which uses or teaches you how to use XState with React applications and make some real-life applications. And so this workshop is going to be a version 2 of the first workshop, which is teaching the basics of XState in vanilla JavaScript, and also addressing 2 of the biggest asks from the first workshop. The first one is, how do you model your states? Like, how do you even think about planning what states, transitions, and events do I need in an app before you even start coding? And the second part is there's going to be more of an emphasis on the actor model and how you could use that in your apps. So this is definitely not a workshop to miss. And I think it's just going to be live streamed. And I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's going to be free on the day of the workshop. And then it's going to be available via Frontend Master subscription. So don't miss it.
And they have a lot of great courses up there for learning about all sorts of things. So highly recommended. Now, I actually forgot, and now I remembered, I was going to do a little demo to show you what I've been working on this week. So if I share my screen, this is me in my many windows. Here we go. So what I've been working on, and this isn't live yet, but we should be coming live with it soon, is an introduction to the visualizer on our docs. We aim to do this with more of the stately stuff in the future, but I've tried to write a straightforward introduction to the things that you can do with the visualizer. We've got some wonderful embeds there, thanks to Fazad's hard work on the visualizer, so you can actually see things in action, explanations of what we do. Got some little video demos that I've made just showing you some of the cool features that we've got. You see me, my little head moving there. And just various ways in which you can use the visualizer, the sharing options, which I'm a big fan of. Has anyone tried sharing the images yet of the of your machines on Twitter or in your HTML stuff? This is really cool, like having those images live update. It's wicked. And so we've got that, got little explanations of how to use the embed mode and what all the different modes inside embed mode do. And little explanations of other things you can do, how we've got great error messages, a demonstration of different themes that you can use for the code editor, because sometimes you don't want to have to click through every different option to see how it's going to look. So hopefully this will be a useful reference for any of you who'd like to customize your code editor. And a little video on how to use the view controls. So I've got some real basics in there too. And using the command palette, and a little bit about the upcoming features that we've got as well. And so hopefully this will be a useful page on the documentation, so that if you want to know more about the visualizer, or send it to somebody else who doesn't know about the visualizer yet and you want to introduce them to it. I'm hoping that it's helpful. And if you do have any suggestions for this page, anything that you think that I've missed or anything you think would be really valuable, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to join us on the Discord and let me know your ideas, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, looks really good.
Well, fingers crossed. I'm still yet to get the rest of you to give me a proper review and tell me what's wrong with it or where I've missed things out.
Yep, we'll be doing that soon.
Absolutely. And I think if we haven't got anything else to talk about this week, I'm just trying to remember if I'm looking at my agenda. I think we've covered everything.
Just a quick spoiler that me and Laura are privately working on the new official engineering blog for XState and the Stately team. And we're going to be writing a lot of content based on all the demands that you have in the Discord and in the community or over Twitter. We've been basically logging all of them privately somewhere. So there's going to be a video, there's going to be modeling live streams or videos for that. There's going to be a lot of blog posts about these sort of FAQ or unconventional questions that anybody had in Discord.
Yeah, and I actually thought that maybe the discussion that we've had today about convincing your team, I think we're going to put some of those responses in a blog post. I think that would be quite a fun one to have on there. We have a question from John saying, is Stately accepting Hacktoberfest PRs this year? I believe we are, aren't we, David?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
So the Hacktoberfest tag is on the XState and the XState Viz repos, and we really encourage contributions to the XState Viz repo. If you know React, then you're going to be fine. And well, XState, that's definitely a plus too. But I know people have been asking for a lot of features and little tweaks and stuff, and so we would really love community help with that. And speaking of contribution, there was another question about
there was
sorry.
Okay.
How can the community help to develop XState Form, XState Router, and other similar libraries? We're still in the planning phases of that. It's not really priority right now because we have the editor as priority. But once we have some solid plans in that, then we could just write guidelines and future roadmap on like what we want out of these libraries, and then we would love community contributions from this. That's also going to be in the main XState project.
I actually started on one of the Mondays a few weeks ago to write a spec based on the current implementations of form libraries and router libraries out there. Well, we'll have the spec hopefully after the editor, and then everybody can just contribute to that, to the implementation.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun winter.
John also says, I was going to ask Matt if he was waiting for some XState Viz milestone before updating XState Catalogue, or whether he's just short on time. I suspect he's short on time because we all love the catalogue and find it very useful, but we're also doing a lot of things at once.
Oh, anybody can contribute and change that if they want.
That is also true. Yeah. Contributions very much welcome. I'd just go back because we nearly missed it, talking about David's Frontend Masters workshop. Prince Raj Roy says, the vanilla was so good, learn interesting ways to use XState with data attributes.
Yeah,
so
and
it's well worth checking that out.
Yeah, and this is why I focus on vanilla too, because I really want to emphasize that you don't need to, have any specific framework to use with XState. You could do it vanilla in Vue, React, Svelte, Angular, etc. So that's one of the key takeaways I want to highlight.
Great. Does anyone have anything else they wanted to share today?
David, is your focus on the vanilla only on JavaScript or the CSS? Because you gave a talk, I guess, a conference talk about using CSS attributes, for a style machine, a state machine, something like that. A state machine, something like that, if I remember correctly.
I've definitely seen a code example of that somewhere kicking about.
Yeah, I love data attributes, and I think that state machines and CSS work really well together with those data attributes. So that's definitely going to be a highlight of the workshop too.
Oh, that's exciting. I'm looking forward to that. Right. Well, as David is in a coffee shop, we'll let him get back to starting his day with a nice coffee, and we'll make it a short one this week. We will catch the rest of you same time again next week. Thank you for all of your questions and all of your comments. We are reading all of them as we go as well. So we really appreciate you joining in, and we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
See you all.
Thank you.